Welcome to the Housing Choice Voucher Program, also known as Section 8. Menard County Housing Authority is located 30 minutes north of Springfield in Petersburg, Illinois, and administers up to 909 Section 8 vouchers in 24 counties. Because our office is usually not in close proximity to the majority of our clients, you will never be required to come into our office. We will work with you online via email, fax, and over the phone. The Housing Choice Voucher Program provides rental assistance to families so that they can live in a decent, safe, and sanitary home on the private rental market anywhere in the United States where there is a Section 8 program. This can be a house, apartment, duplex, or mobile home. The voucher allows you to live in an eligible unit where the rent is based on your income. The process is as follows: application, approval, voucher issuance, and voucher orientation, finding a unit, turning in the request for tenancy approval form. Menard County Housing Authority approves the unit and must pass inspection, pass rent reasonableness and affordability test, sign a lease, pay the deposit, and move in. This chart shows the relation between the housing authority, the tenant, and the owner. Jurisdiction is the geographical area where Menard County Housing Authority can lease vouchers. If you meet the eligibility requirements and your desired location is not in MCHA jurisdiction, you can exercise portability. But first, let's see where MCHA jurisdiction covers. The following counties are included in the Menard County Housing Authority jurisdiction: If you choose to port your voucher, simply complete and return the portability request form to MCHA. MCHA will determine eligibility and analyze any potential financial burden to the housing agency. If approved, we will send your paperwork to the housing agency who covers the area you wish to go to. You will then be able to find an eligible unit in that area to use your voucher. From that point on, you will be with the other housing agency. If you fail to comply with the following requirements, your voucher can be subject to termination. Remember, the most important thing you can do is communicate. Keep us informed about any challenges or changes. The following regulations can be found in Chapter 24 of the Code of Federal Regulations or on your voucher. You must supply any information requested by the Public Housing Agency or Department of Housing and Urban Development. This includes Social Security numbers, identity documentation, income, assets, expenses, citizenship declaration, and you must sign required documents including releases of information. All information must be true and complete. Falsifying information is considered fraud. You must comply with annual reexaminations. This means MCHA will request documentation on a yearly basis to reevaluate your income. For interim reexaminations, you must report changes immediately, including members moving out and persons moving in. MCHA will conduct rent changes throughout the year if you request a change. You are not required to report increases in income until your next annual reexamination. In Section 8, HQS is how MCHA grades the unit as being safe, decent, and sanitary. The subsidized unit is subject to initial and biennial or more inspections to ensure that the unit meets housing quality standards. An HQS breach caused by the family is the responsibility of the family to correct. Examples may include a broken window, disconnection of utilities, and any other damages to the unit beyond normal wear and tear. Ultimately, it is the responsibility of the landlord to enforce the lease. However, serious and/or repeated violations of your lease could result in termination of your voucher. Depending on the reason, your voucher could be subject to termination if you are evicted by the landlord. You must inform MCHA if you are planning to vacate a unit or if you are served with an eviction notice. You must also inform MCHA when you return possession of the unit, so that the rent isn't paid beyond the time you vacate. If you choose to move to a different unit with your voucher, the new unit must be approved by MCHA first. You must use the assisted unit as your only residence. Only persons approved by MCHA are permitted to reside in the unit. You must notify MCHA and/or request approval before adding anyone as an occupant of the unit. You must also notify MCHA if a member vacates the unit. You may not sublease or let the unit. In other words, you cannot rent out your unit to someone else. You may not assign the lease or transfer the unit. You may engage in legal profit-making in your unit as long as the unit is still primarily used as your place of residence. Legal profit-making examples include babysitting, selling jewelry, makeup, candles, cookware, doing hair, etc. However, you must also follow state and local code. For example, babysitting a large quantity of children may require a license. Any income must be reported to MCHA prior to lease-up and an annual reexamination. A family or family member may be temporarily absent from the unit. MCHA policy defines temporary as no more than 180 days. It is always best to notify MCHA even if you expect an absence to be brief. You may have guests in your unit for a temporary time. MCHA policy defines temporary as 30 consecutive days or a total of 90 cumulative calendar days during any 12-month period. The assisted family cannot have any ownership or interest in the unit. Also, you may not rent from a parent, grandparent, child, grandchild, brother, or sister. The only exception would be if a disabled family required a reasonable accommodation where the only unit fitting that accommodation was owned by a family member. This program is funded by federal dollars. If you willfully or intentionally make false statements or provide false information to the housing agency to obtain assisted housing, you could face termination of your voucher, be required to pay back all rental assistance paid, be fined up to $10,000, face imprisonment up to 5 years, and/or be prohibited from receiving future assistance. Members of the household may not engage in drug-related criminal activity, violent criminal activity, or any other criminal activity or alcohol abuse in a way that threatens the health, safety, or right to peaceful enjoyment of other residents near your unit. While MCHA can only deny your application based on convictions, MCHA may decide to terminate your voucher for these reasons based on complaints, police reports, or other investigation methods. No family members may receive double subsidy while residing in an assisted unit. This means that a family member cannot be on the voucher but also be on a voucher or lease at another subsidized property. You cannot use your voucher in a unit that is already subsidized. Whether or not children will reside in the household, the landlord is required to disclose the presence of known lead-based paint hazards for any unit built before 1978. The HQS inspection will also seek out these hazards and instruct the landlord to correct the hazard before the unit is approved. TTP, total tenant payment, is the maximum amount that the family is responsible to pay. TTP is figured by using the highest of 1, 30% of the family's monthly adjusted income, or 2, 10% of the family's monthly gross income. A family is issued a voucher with a bedroom size assigned based on the relationship, gender, age, and quantity of the residents who will occupy a unit. Each bedroom size for each jurisdiction has a payment standard, or a maximum dollar amount for the gross rent. The gross rent is what the landlord is asking for rent plus the utility allowance. We can't know what the utility allowance will be until we know what type of utilities are present in the unit and who is responsible for paying each utility. Here you will see the payment standards by county for 2019. Every family who pays at least one utility will receive a utility allowance when MCHA calculates rent. MCHA will do an annual study to obtain these figures. If the difference between the TTP and the utility allowance is positive, that difference is your rent. If it's negative, that difference is your URP. Note, if the payment standard was exceeded, an overage will be calculated in. Examples: with a TTP of $300 and a utility allowance of $100, your rent would be $200. With a TTP of $50 and a utility allowance of $250, your utility reimbursement payment would be $200. With a TTP of $450 and a utility allowance of $200, your rent would be $250. Examples: with a payment standard of $808, a unit with a rent of $750 and a utility allowance of $250 equals $1,000 and will not pass since it's over your payment standard. With a payment standard of $640, a unit with a rent of $400 and a utility allowance of $100 equals $500 and will pass since it's under your payment standard. Do not sign a lease or pay any deposits or move in until MCHA approves the unit. If you do, you are signing a legally binding document on a unit that could fail. After a unit has been approved by MCHA, you will be instructed to sign a lease with the landlord. The initial lease must be a minimum of 12 months. After that, MCHA has no requirements on the length of the lease. If no new lease is provided, MCHA assumes the lease will renew month to month. Read the lease before you sign it. You need to know if you are getting locked into a 12-month commitment or if you have the option to vacate with notice, and you need to know all of the rules and expectations of the landlord. A HUD document known as a tenancy addendum must be attached to the lease. If there is an issue in the lease that contradicts the tenancy addendum will override the lease. Also, if something is not covered in the lease, it will fall to the tenancy addendum as default. This is set up as a protection for you and the housing agency. A copy is provided in your packet for your review. You may find a unit where the owner has worked with the program before, or you may find a unit where the owner is not familiar with the program. The pamphlet, A Good Place to Live, is a guide of what is required to pass the HQS inspection. Please show this guide to the landlord or have them contact our office if they wish to learn more. This program is designed to allow a family to reside in a unit of their choice on the private rental market. You may find rentals in local newspapers, by word of mouth, the internet, etc. A list of landlords who may have rental units is included. These owners may or may not have any vacancies. Remember, this unit must be within our jurisdiction unless you choose portability. The gross rent must be within the payment standard, the landlord must be willing to accept Section 8, and the unit must pass the HQS inspection. After MCHA passes the HQS inspection and you have signed a lease with the landlord, MCHA will sign a HAP contract with the landlord. Now you can move in and MCHA can start paying rent to the landlord on your behalf. Disabled families may request a reasonable accommodation. The request form is in your packet. A family may need a reasonable accommodation to change a policy, practice, or procedure, or may need an accommodation to be able to use and enjoy their housing assistance. There must be a nexus or relationship from the disability to the reasonable accommodation. Fair housing is your right. It is unlawful to discriminate in housing based on these factors: race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, or handicap. Your packet includes a pamphlet with a complaint form you can use to file a complaint if you believe you have been a victim of discrimination. The Violence Against Women Act provides protections for victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. This program is for men too, despite the name, but was designed to keep victims of such abuse safe from losing their housing assistance. Victims under VAWA are entitled to special privileges in order to keep them safe. Contact MCHA or refer to the pamphlet in your packet for more information. MCHA has been asked to encourage families with vouchers to seek housing outside of high poverty areas. Advantages of locating housing outside of high poverty census tracts include better schools, more job opportunities, lower crime rate, better public services, more shopping, and other amenities. See the pamphlet for more information. Here you will find the contact information for the Menard County Housing Authority Housing Choice Voucher Program. Your caseworker is Andy Dixon. Call or text directly to 217-610-8135 or email her at adixon@menardcha.org. Like us on Facebook or visit our website at www.menardcha.org.